Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're all doing well. Today I'm going to talk about my top 5 English novels. So this started as a conversation between Eric and Sarah on Eric Carl Anderson's channel about their top 5 favourite English novels, and then it has morphed into a tag, and I was tagged to do this by Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. I'll link Alice's channel down below. If you're not already subscribed to Alice, please go check her out. Because she's brilliant. So my top 5 English novels, some caveats. I have only included classics and modern classics. So one book on this list we would call a classic. The other 4 I think we would call modern classics. I haven't included any contemporary novels on this list. If I were going to include contemporary, probably Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo would be on there. And this is specifically English novels, not British as such. I found it really easy to come up with this list. It took me like 5 minutes to put my list together, and that may be because it was only a couple of months ago that I did a video about 40 of my favourite books of all time for my 40th birthday, which I'll link down below. And obviously a whole number of books on that list are not English books. So I'm going to go through these in chronological order in terms of date of publication. So, the first book on this list is the only one of this list that I've only read once. The others I've read multiple times, but this book I only read for the first time last year. It was published in 1818 and it is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So, I loved this book. It was one of my favourite books that I read last year. It's really quite short, but there's so much in here. What I knew about this book is what, your average person on the street knows about it. Obviously, I know Frankenstein is the name of the scientist, not of the creature. But this wasn't what I expected. It's a lot more thoughtful than what I was expecting. A lot of the action with Frankenstein's creature takes place off page. There is a lot of focus on Frankenstein himself as a character. And there was also some bits which were really quite horrific and I wasn't quite expecting. Again, they, I think, happened off page, but nevertheless, they were quite shocking. I love the writing in this book. I think it's incredible how much is packed into such, it's only like 200 pages long, such a short novel. It is a book that I will definitely be revisiting in the future. Next, we're going to jump forward over 100 years, and we're going back to my first true love, which is Agatha Christie. So I had to include an Agatha Christie book on this list, and I've gone for And Then There Were None, which was published in 1939. So And Then There Were None is often cited as one of Agatha Christie's best novels. It's my personal favourite. It is a standalone, so there's no Poirot and there's no Miss Marple. We have a group of 10 strangers who are all invited to this remote island under mysterious circumstances, and one by one they start to die. What I love about this book is, with all great mysteries, I think when the solution comes, it's a surprise. But then when you look back or when you reread it, the clues are there. And I think it's a really cleverly plotted book. I've read this several times. I'm probably due a reread quite soon. Okay, book number 3, we're going to jump forward 10 years to 1949. And that is 1984 by George Orwell. I love this book. Obviously, I love all these books, but I love this book. I've read this several times. The last time I read it was, I think, 2 years ago. And between reads, I always forget how much I love it, and then I read it again and I'm like, this is just incredible. I don't think this is the most well written book ever, but I just love what it does. In particular, I love what it says about the power of language. So there is an appendix to the book which you are directed to read quite early on in the novel, and the appendix is called The Principles of Newspeak. So in this edition, it's 14 pages long, and it's all about Newspeak, which is the official language of Oceania, and it's the language that the government has developed. And so the appendix is like a government document which sets out the principles of Newspeak, but as the reader you can see how the government is using language to manipulate the thoughts of the people, and I just find it absolutely fascinating. I think language in general is just really fascinating, and that in particular is what I love about this book. I'm always surprised how many people haven't read this book. Then I think, like, most people could probably say that about their favourite books, and there's a whole ton of classics that I have not read. But I would say if you haven't read this, you should really pick it up. I think a lot of people read Animal Farm in school, don't they? I didn't. I have read Animal Farm, but I really don't like it that much. So don't let that put you off. 1984 is such a great book. It's a modern classic for a reason, and I just think it's amazing. Okay, book number 4. We're going to jump forward 2 years to 1951, and we're going to go to some Daphne du Maurier. My favourite Daphne du Maurier novel is My Cousin Rachel. Now, I was trying to remember if this was my first du Maurier, and it could have been. I read a lot of du Maurier when I was a teenager. My Cousin Rachel is about a young man called Philip, who has grown up with his cousin, his elder cousin Ambrose, because he was an orphan. And him and Ambrose have a very close relationship. Ambrose marries a woman called Rachel, who he meets whilst in Italy. And really the novel centres around Rachel and to what extent Rachel can be trusted. I can still distinctly remember the experience of first reading this book as a teenager. I just absolutely loved it. I love the opening. I love how it ends. And I really like the narrative voice of this book. There's something about it that really stands out to me, and that's why it's my personal favourite book by Daphne du Maurier. Okay, book number 5. We're going to jump forward quite a lot now to 1989. This author was born in Japan, moved to England when he was about 5 years old, and this novel won the Booker Prize in 1989, and it's The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I love Kazuo Ishiguro. I've read several of his books. I've still got 3 left to read. The Remains of the Day, again, may have been the first one that I read by him. And I just love it. And it's funny because when you hear the plot of The Remains of the Day, it really does not sound that interesting. So it's about a sort of an elderly butler called Stevens who is going on a road trip to visit a previous colleague who he worked with in Darlington Hall. So he spent sort of his whole life in service to Lord Darlington, and he is, I guess, reflecting back on those years in service, on what that has meant to him. And it's just so fascinating. I think it's a really interesting narrative viewpoint. Ishiguro's books, at least the ones I've read, they have a sort of a quiet understatedness about them, which I think is really effective. And I love how Ishiguro explores the nature of memory. And that's something I think he explores in all of his books. And he said himself that his books are all basically about the same thing. He just sort of changes the context each time he writes a new book. He said that himself. But I think it's very true. But I think he just does it so well. So those are my top 5 favourite English novels. I'm going to tag a couple of people. I'm going to tag Amelia Barlow Books. If you haven't checked out Amelia's channel, please do so. She's a relatively new booktuber and she's got some great videos. She's done some great vlogs, so you should check it out. And I'm also going to tag another great channel, Ange's Book Chatter. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Please do let me know what your thoughts are on those books and what your favourite English novels are. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.